Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're talking to Joe Crawford, John Eden, about the 2012 Minnesota State Legislature and some of the bills that have been introduced affecting homeowner associations. We're talking about House File 1254 and some of the prohibitions. The one we've been talking about is flag poles. And before all of this took place, John, maybe you could let our listeners know what kind of prohibitions did a homeowner association have when it came to flagpoles?
Well, I think that there have always, or not always, but there are provisions for displaying flags, and that's something that has been protected. But it's the pole and the location of the pole, I think, that has become the real issue now.
So what we're talking about is before people were not prohibited from being able to display the American flag.
Correct.
That's always been the case, but somehow things have come up now with the state legislature, and they are wanting to redefine it because they don't think that there is really true freedom unless the person has the ability to plant anything they want, how they want it, where they want it. Does that kind of sum it up?
That's what it sounds like to me, and it derives from the original situation. The original woman who brought the complaint to her legislator. She had a single family lot, and in a particular situation like that, it might make a lot more sense. But when we're dealing with like townhomes, which are still included in this bill,
right?
Where are we going to put that? I mean, our CIC plat defines our lot size, and sometimes it's a foot or two off the foundation.
You brought something up. She's the one that brought this up. But Tony, do you remember in our conversation with her, we asked her if she talked to her homeowners association at all,
and she had not.
She had
never approached them either about getting permission in advance to put up this flagpole, or I don't even know if she had talked to them about the violation. Had she?
No, she hadn't.
Yeah.
Although you said that she did acknowledge that she had understood her homeowner associations.
Well, Joe said he heard that from her.
You did.
He heard that from her in one of the meetings that she fully understood
she had
that.
said that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Correct.
What keeps coming to my mind is the unintended consequences. I think you guys were criticized a little bit for being too picky about the language, or too.
We were. I mean, when we went to the hearing on Wednesday, I think the intent of the legislators that wrote this didn't understand how we understood the depth of this language and what it meant.
And that's what I keep getting back to, the unintended consequences of ill-informed legislators throwing terms around.
Right.
And we can see clearly how our associations might interpret this and how the individual members might, correct?
Well, how about real estate attorneys that actually testified, and John being an attorney?
Yeah, you were talking about the term exclusive, right?
Correct. And where is that defined? And not only in this particular segment, but in other segments of this proposed House file.
They talk about exclusive use of some area.
Right. and what is that? I mean, enter the lawyers, because I think this is my exclusive use, and your HOA doesn't think it is. And when we think about how statutes are created, like the 515B, the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act, and how careful that consideration is made, and input from a number of legal practitioners in the field, and inviting comment, and so on and so forth, carefully considered, long-term consequences considered, sorts of things. Terms are defined, and we know where the boundaries are, and we avoid disputes, and we avoid litigation because of that careful consideration.
There you go.
And that's not happening here.
Yeah, it seems like, and if we put this in perspective, again, I ask the question: how much input have these legislators had from others in order to be able to come to this point to make this legislation?
Yeah, I think the House author has had very little. I think we could.
I think he had three people, if I'm not mistaken.
Two, I think. Two, in fact, showed up.
Two, and two were people that came to him and talked to him.
Right.
The third was a news article that he read from the Star Tribune, but he had not talked to this individual.
Correct.
He had not
read about this individual?
He read about it. He read about a news story. He had not talked to this person, not talked to the homeowners association. With those two people that made complaints, he talked about he talked to these two individuals, but he didn't get the other side of the story. Doesn't that seem a little strange to you?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the tail wagging the dog completely.
Yeah, I can't understand the mindset that could say, we will just take those people at face value, even though I know in one case, one person was someone that has been a part of that person's life for quite a while, and politically has probably been a help to where that person is today. So they feel an allegiance there, and I certainly understand and respect that relationship. But it certainly is bad legislation when you try to make a rule, try to make a law, an ordinance, based on one incident. I mean, how do you instruct your associations and people that you deal with when it comes to changing rules and regulations or the governing documents?
They have to follow very specified procedures, and they have to invite comment, and everybody has an opportunity to be heard. And it's not just one person that gets to run in there and say, okay, I'm going to sign this form and we're going to change our declaration, and everybody's going to abide by this now.
That's such a good point. How many boards and homeowners associations would get by with disallowing dogs because one person came to the board meeting and said, I'm unhappy with my neighbor's dog?
They wouldn't go to the legislature, though, and say, we need to change the law because my association, I mean, you would think you would deal with that process. I think John mentioned it. Due process does happen in our townhome associations.
It's kind of like killing a fly with a grenade. It's a little bit overkill, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, you've been involved with homeowner associations for years,
right?
I mean, and how many associations do you know that have gone ahead and done sweeping changes within their documents just based on the account of one individual?
We wouldn't. I mean, I would not ever advise them to do that.
Right.
I mean, they need to look into it. They need to investigate. Is it something that's going to have a greater benefit to all and not just one?
Okay, so here we are. There was this law that came up. We initially came up and said, hey, wait a minute, there's some really bad things poorly written here. They backed away, and nicely so, took a number of things out. The promise was that they were going to meet. We tried to meet, but that didn't take place. I don't think there was probably anything ill-conceived with anybody trying to ditch anybody, but it never took place,
didn't happen.
did it?
So this week, you're there to testify on amendments that occurred the very morning.
Correct.
That you were there to testify.
Yeah.
So that was
well,
difficult.
it's against House rules, too. I mean, and that should be noted that the Minnesota House has strict rules that they're supposed to post all meetings, articles basically out there for the public to see for 24 hours prior to a hearing. We got them within an hour.
Oh, wow.
And wasn't it the fact, now here we are, the hearing was scheduled for 12:30 on Wednesday the 15th.
Yep.
And the first change to this bill came, it was on the 14th. It said at 5:37 p.m.
Yeah,
I've got a copy.
Yep.
So after the business day, there's a change. But how do people know about that or that it gets out? We find out about it in the morning. But then by the time we got to the to the state capitol, maybe 15, 20 minutes beforehand, we found out that there was something else that changed again at like 11:16 a.m.
Yeah.
And it changed again, and we got that. I think the ink was still wet when we were walking in, as it were, to the hearing.
Boy, that does not seem to me to be due diligence. And in fact, maybe I shouldn't say this, but there's certain people, you've probably all worked with someone in your office that you find out is getting work done but with no concern at all for how it's done.
Yeah.
They just say, okay, I got that done. There's that pile. I'm starting to think of legislators.
But I guess to me, it would be a little bit different. I mean, if there wasn't any pushback that they were aware of and they wanted to make a change, I think that's fine. But clearly, I think our industry has come out with a strong voice, wouldn't you say, with people saying, hey, wait a minute. We don't like how this sounds.
Yeah, I think we were speaking in unison on this, and that's all the different associations that are involved. It wasn't just CAI LAC and CAI Minnesota. It was Minnesota Multi-Housing was involved. The cooperative network was involved. And we were all in unison saying there's issues. Yeah. And we had spoken to them about these.
Yeah, and so you would think that in the very least, people would say, you know what, we've got to at least let you know what it is that we're thinking 24 hours at least prior to the hearing, so that we have some idea of being able to talk. You know, Socrates said if there's going to be true understanding, there needs to be candor, intelligence, and goodwill. Well, that intelligence, the idea of having the same understanding, just that wasn't there. You can't have you can't come to a consensus. You can't build that way.
Well, and you knew that, Gene, from testifying, is we were making changes 10 minutes before you were going to testify, but you thought we were going to be working off this other amendment and this other amendment. Yeah. And how can you prepare to be a stakeholder if you don't know truthfully what's going to occur?
Yeah, and there's a little exchange that took place at that hearing, too, that we'll talk about, but we'll need to take a break first. We'll be back more with the 2012 state legislature and how it's affecting homeowner associations in Minnesota after this.